Hey everybody, Pastor Jeff here. So glad that you're joining us for this week's devotion. Let me read you a couple of verses and then I'm going to tell you what I'd like to talk about. It's Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God." And it's really just a small little phrase that I wanted to talk about today. Verse 2 starts in my Bible, looking to Jesus. A lot of Bibles say, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. What does it mean to fix our eyes on Jesus? What does it mean to look at Jesus? And why is that important? So I want to talk today about having a laser focus. And it makes me think of when we first moved to Georgia, 2006. So the fall of 2006, my brother-in-law loved to hunt, and so I went hunting with him. And I've got to admit, I think I was 29 years old, first time I ever went hunting for anything. And so we, did all the things. I don't know, I probably had to go buy some camo, and I didn't even have a gun, but I went with them. And we sat for several hours one evening. I don't even know if we saw a squirrel, and, pretty uneventful. So the next time we went out, at some point I got a gun that fall, but we went out again. And it was a little bit later in the year, and it was a cold morning, and it probably had rained maybe the day before, but I know there was a heavy fog, and we were out early, like you're supposed to do, I guess, if you're hunting for deer, and it was so foggy, and it was cold, and it was early, and I fell asleep. I woke up. In the end, I didn't see anything. I was sleeping. He didn't see anything. Another uneventful trip. Another time we went out together that fall. We walked down a Forest Service road. And he was showing me. We weren't actually hunting. We were just going out, and we were just kind of scouting some things out. He had a blind that he wanted to set up in this certain spot, so I went with him. And I went back maybe a week later or two. This time I was by myself, so I have no idea what I'm doing. Never even seen an animal when I've been out with a gun before. But I went out by myself, got set up in this blind, and I thought, I guess, if I shoot something, then I'll have to call them or whatever. And so I was sitting there. It was in the evening, I guess, and fell asleep again. And this time when I woke up, it was raining. So anyways, needless to say, I'm not the most focused hunter, and probably not the guy you're going to count on if you need meat in your freezer and there's no food in the supermarket. But what I'm illustrating is I did not have the focus required to be a successful hunter. I don't know if I was working too hard or what, but it seems like I like to fall asleep when I'm out there in the woods, and I'm not really fixed in on the target. Also makes me remember when I was first starting to cut the grass. And I laugh now because I look back and I remember my dad always complained that I didn't keep the line straight. And if you come to my yard, it might not be the prettiest yard, but when I've mowed, you can see the lines are straight. And you'll know if I mowed or one of the boys mowed because my lines are straight and theirs tend to go back and forth. And what my dad taught me was, you look at where you're going, you don't look down where you are, you look where you want to go, where you want to be, and that's where you focus, and that's how you know you're going to get to where you want to go. So when this verse says to fix our eyes on Jesus, or looking at Jesus, it means that he constantly needs to be in the forefront of our mind. So what are the things that keep us from focusing on Jesus? Well, I've jotted a few things down. Some of these things are great things. Maybe some of them aren't so great, but just time with family and friends. That could distract you from spending time with Jesus. Your workload could do that. Social media. Everyone knows just how much time being on Facebook or Instagram or whatever your platform of choice, watching the news reading the newspaper, that can consume us sometimes, where we just have to know what's going on. We could spend hours a day doing that. Sports, just trying to keep up with what's going on. If you've got kids that play sports, sometimes that can be consuming. There's so many things that distract us from keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. So when I think about this verse, we don't know who the author of Hebrews is, but we do know that this book was written during the first century, probably when Nero was the emperor. And we know that Nero persecuted Christians. He made life difficult for those who were followers of Christ. You were risking your life to be a Christian. There was all kinds of unrest for believers. And if you read through the book of Acts, which really is kind of mostly before Nero, even then, though, you see the apostles being harassed. You see them being put in jail. You see them being persecuted by the different parties. You read of Paul being lowered from the city wall in a basket to escape the persecution. Paul and Silas in jail. Peter's in jail. And what's interesting to me is their response to these situations. Lots of options for how they could respond, but their method to respond to these difficulties, these distractions, these persecutions was to pray. It was to minister more, and it was to continue to preach the gospel. So their focus, they had laser focus. They weren't falling asleep in the woods like I was when I tried to hunt. They were laser focused on who Christ was and what Christ had done for them, and getting this message out to those who hadn't heard. So they did a great job of fixing their eyes on Jesus, and they did that through prayer, through ministry, through preaching of the gospel. And so often we want to get caught up in, we do just get caught up in life. Some of these things that I've mentioned, they just distract us and take us off course. We find time to do all of these things, but sometimes struggle to get even 15 minutes, let alone 30 minutes or an hour with the Lord each day, whether that's in prayer, in Bible study, in reading. We have a hard time doing that, but we find time for all these other things. Sometimes we can get caught up. This is an election year. We can get caught up in thinking the biggest difference we could make is making sure that our party gets elected or that our representative gets elected. Now, of course, politics, it's important who we're voting for, who we're supporting, what they believe in, what they're supporting. Those are important things. But as we go through that process, and this is an election year, we need to make sure that our eyes remain fixed on Jesus first. And if we haven't spent the time on a regular basis to fix our eyes on Him, to spend time with Him, to know who He is, to have conversation with Him, then all these other things become a greater priority, and it's out of whack. And we need to reprioritize to put Jesus first, to fix our eyes on Him first. And these other things then fall into place. So my encouragement to you today is to remain in the Word, remain in conversation with God throughout the day, but also in designated times during the day. And I'm telling you, I'm just like you. That can be difficult to do. And I bring up this. I mentioned politics as an example. I just spent probably more time on it than I needed to. But I say that to say we've got a question in this week for Ask the Pastor. How do you mix faith and politics? So that's going to be coming up probably in October. We'll be answering that question in the Ask a Pastor segment. And so that's why I mentioned it just briefly here today. It is an important topic. So hope you guys are doing well. If you need something, please call the church, and we would love to help you with that. If you find yourself in a good situation and the Lord's blessed you and He's provided for you, why don't you call somebody today and make sure that they're doing okay and see what you can do to help them. As the Lord lays someone on your heart, that could be something you talk to Him today about. Lord, who's in my life that you want me to check in on today? Who could I minister to? Who could I be a blessing to? As we fix our eyes on Jesus, those are the things that will become most important to us, is seeing that those that are around us are being loved, they're being cared for, and like the disciples, like the apostles, to make Jesus known in our community. That becomes the next most important thing. So love you guys. Hope you're doing well. Looking forward to catching up with you soon.